So one of the first questions was how many zeros are at the end of 2020 factorial? So
One zero.
how many zeros? So,
There's 2 zeros.
well, hold on. Let's look at what is a factorial. Let's start there.
We didn't have factorial yet, yeah?
Well, let's define factorial right now.
Okay.
So what is a factorial? So a factorial means we have a times a minus 1 times a minus 2 all the way till 1. That's how the factorial is defined. So say 10 factorial would be 10 times 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 and times 1. And you can think of the factorial as how many ways can we line people up. So if we have 10 people, we want to line them up in a line, we can choose the first person in 10 ways. Then once that person is chosen, we have 9 people left to pick from, and then 8 and so on. And by the time you get to the 10th spot in line, there should only be 1 person left. All right, so that said, now that we know what a factorial is, let's look at this example here first. Let's look at 10 factorial. So just looking at 10 factorial, how many zeros will be at the end of 10 factorial? And don't use a calculator for this. And if you can't think of that, I'm going to ask another question. What about, say, 10 times 10? What number is that? It's 100. And we have 1, 2 zeros. Okay, so let's think of another number then. How about 10 times 3 times 5 times 10? What would that give us? Well, that's going to give us 1,500. And again, we still only have 2 zeros at the end. So you don't have to say this aloud, or you can type it in the chat. What is the only number that is impacting the number of zeros at the end of our number? If you don't see it, what about, let's say, 3 times 5? 3 times 5 is 15, and notice we have no zeros at the end. So what is the, okay, thank you, Najwa. Yeah, it is 15. So what number is actually having an effect? What number causes zeros at the end of a number? The number with the zeros. So yeah, the 10. The only numbers we have to consider or worry about are the numbers 10. So with that said, I'm going to move this aside off. So clearly we only have to worry about tens. Actually, I'll just leave that up. So we only need to concern ourselves with the tens. Okay, so let's look at 10 factorial again. And it's not our original example, but I think it'll help. So 10 factorial. I see a 10 here. And will I have any other 10s? And you can just type in yes or no. What do you think? Will I have any other 10s? Okay, Herman, no, but let's ask ourselves, what does 10 equal? 10 equals what times what? 2 times 5. Do I have any 2s and any 5s left here in the rest of this factorial? I do have some. So if you notice, I have this 5, and I have lots of 2s to choose from. I have a couple here, I have one here, I have one here, I have 3 here. So for any of these values, let me do this in purple. For any of these factorials, since 10 equals 5 times 2, and there are more 2s, you can already see the arrows point to 2s, and there are more 2s. We only need to find the number of fives in the product. So that is all we need to concern ourselves. I'm going to erase this, but I'm going to let the screen sit for a little bit in case you want to take a screenshot. And I will be posting a video of this later, so it could help to have the screen sit up for a little longer. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this now. And erase the leftover. So let's go to our side example again. And that's 10 factorial. So already we notice there's a 10 here and this 5 here. And those both will give us zeros at the end. So I'm going to say there are 2 zeros at the end of 10 factorial. And now I can check my work. So on a calculator, 10 factorial is going to be 3,628,800. And if you notice, we were correct. There are indeed 2 zeros at the end. So we were correct. So let's apply the same technique here to 2020. Oh, actually, before we do, let me show you the technique. So if we divide 10 by 5, we get 2. But then every time we have a 25, that's 2 more zeros. So if our number was bigger, if this number here was bigger than 25, we want to divide it by 25, but in this case, we don't have to. Since 10 is smaller than 25. So now let's think of 2020, the number 2020. Well, we can definitely divide 2020 by 5. So take a moment and do that on your calculator. And I purposely put in this because we want the floor. So if you get a decimal, you're going to look at whatever integer is. So you're basically going to round down is the idea with the floor. And 2020 divided by 5 is going to give us 404. Okay, but we can keep going. Thank you, Najibullah. Wonderful. So now let's do 2020 divided by 5 squared. So that's 2020 divided by 25. And we get 80 in this case. Okay, so that's 80 more zeros we have. And now we have to do 5 cubed. 5 cubed is 125, so we can still keep dividing. So this equals 2020 divided by 125. And if anyone has a calculator out, that'd be great. I have my calculator out as well. 16, wonderful. The floor of that is 16, Herman. Yep, you are correct. And so what about 5 to the 4th power? That's 625, so we can keep going. And 5 to the 4th is, oh, I already said that, 625. Oh, 3, wonderful. Thank you, thank you. So that would give us 3. And then let's look at 5 to the 5th power. Well, 5 to the 5th power is equal to 3,125, and that's larger than 2020, so we're done. Now let's just add up 404 plus 80 plus 16 plus 3. And that should get us 5 and change. So that's 80 plus 16 plus 3. And sure enough, it gets us 503. So this tells me there are 503 zeros at the end of 2020 factorial. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so that was the first problem from the group work on page 68. And this is, I will add, very similar to one of the problems on HBA 4.